My sister's daughter was rushed to the hospital with a burst appendix. I called Melissa 4 times before she finally answered. "Rachel, we're in Cabo. We already paid for the villa. Can't you just handle it?" I stood in that hospital hallway holding my 7-year-old niece's hand while she cried for her mother, and my sister was ordering another margarita by the pool. 3 days later, when Melissa finally came home tan and rested, she looked at the hospital bill I'd paid, looked at her daughter's stitches, and told everyone at Sunday dinner that I had tried to kidnap Ava while she was gone. That single sentence would end up costing her everything she thought she owned. But you need to understand how we got here first. My name is Rachel Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and until last spring, I thought I had a pretty normal relationship with my younger sister. Melissa is 31. She's always been the golden child in our family. The one who got the trophies, the prom crown, the corner bedroom with the good view while I got the room next to the laundry closet. Our parents, David and Carol Bennett, live about 20 minutes from me in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. They're good people in most ways, but if I'm honest, they've always had a soft spot for Melissa that bordered on blind devotion. I never resented her for it when we were kids. I actually loved my sister fiercely. When she got engaged to her husband, Tyler Grant, I threw her bridal shower myself, spent 3 months planning every detail because I wanted her to have the wedding she always dreamed about. When she had Ava, I was the first person she called from the delivery room before she even called our parents. I became Aunt Rachel, who is basically a second mom, and I wore that title with pride. I work as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm downtown, Whitfield and Cross, specializing in family and probate law. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and more importantly, it taught me things about contracts, documentation, and legal process that most people never think to learn. I mention this now because it becomes very important later. I'm married to Mark, a quiet, steady man who works in logistics and has the patience of a saint, which he needed plenty of during the year I'm about to tell you about. We don't have kids of our own yet, so Ava became something like the daughter I hadn't had. I picked her up from school on Tuesdays and Thursdays because Melissa and Tyler both worked long hours. I sewed her Halloween costume 2 years running. I was there for her first day of first grade because Melissa had a hair appointment she said she absolutely could not move. I didn't complain about any of it back then. Family helps family. That's what I believed, right down to my bones. The trouble started small, the way it always does. Melissa and Tyler began taking more vacations, longer ones, fancier ones, while asking me to watch Ava just this once, so often that just this once became basically every month. Never charged them. I never even asked for gas money when I drove Ava 40 minutes each way to her gymnastics classes. My mother would say things like, "Well, Melissa works so hard, she deserves a break," conveniently forgetting that I also worked a full-time job while doing unpaid childcare on the side. Then came the summer trip to Cabo San Lucas. Melissa and Tyler planned a 10-day anniversary getaway, leaving Ava with our parents for the first few days, and then, when my mother's arthritis flared up, the rest of the week landed on me without much discussion. I didn't mind, not really. I loved having Ava at our house, watching movies with popcorn, teaching her how to make pancakes shaped like animals. On day 6 of the trip, everything changed. Ava woke up in the middle of the night complaining that her stomach hurt so badly she couldn't stand up straight. I checked her temperature, and it was climbing fast. By 2 a.m., she was curled on the bathroom floor, pale and sweating, telling me in a small, terrified voice that the pain was the worst thing ever. I didn't hesitate. I called an ambulance. At the emergency room, The doctors told us her appendix had ruptured and she needed emergency surgery immediately, or the infection could spread and become life-threatening. I signed the temporary guardian consent forms with shaking hands because I was the responsible adult present and every minute mattered. Then I called Melissa. It took 4 calls and 2 texts before she finally picked up, and when she did, I could hear music and laughter in the background, the unmistakable sound of a resort pool party. "Rachel, we're in Cabo," she said, like I'd forgotten, like I hadn't just watched her daughter get wheeled into an operating room. "We already paid for the villa through Friday. Can't you just handle it? The doctors know what they're doing." I stood in that sterile hallway, phone pressed to my ear, and I felt something inside me crack. Not fully break yet, but crack. "Melissa, she's in surgery right now. This is her appendix. This is serious." I know. It's just, we can't get a flight out until tomorrow at the earliest, and honestly, the timing is just really bad. Text me updates, okay? Love you. Gotta go. Tyler's calling the front desk about our dinner reservation. The call ended before I could say another word. I sat in that waiting room alone for 6 hours while my 7-year-old niece had surgery and her own mother was choosing dinner reservations. When Ava woke up from anesthesia, groggy and scared, the first thing she asked was, "Where's Mommy?" I told her Mommy was on her way, because what else do you tell a child who just went through major surgery? I stayed by her hospital bed for the next 3 days, sleeping in a chair that destroyed my back, coordinating with nurses, making sure her pain medication schedule was followed exactly, holding her hand every time she winced. Melissa and Tyler didn't fly home until day 9 of their 10-day trip, 1 full day before the resort checkout, conveniently enough. When Melissa finally walked into Ava's hospital room, tan, relaxed, carrying a gift shop teddy bear she'd grabbed at the airport, she hugged Ava for exactly 30 seconds before turning to me with a strange, tight expression on her face. "So," she said, "the doctor mentioned you signed some guardian paperwork." "I had to, Melissa. You weren't here, and they needed consent to operate. It was a formality. Temporary emergency guardian consent. That's all it was. I explained this in the texts I sent you." "I didn't really read all of it," she admitted. "I was a little busy." I let it go because Ava was right there in the bed, still hooked up to an IV, and I refused to argue in front of her. I thought that would be the end of it. An uncomfortable moment we'd move past. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, our family gathered for Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition we'd kept for years. I walked in expecting the usual, some wine, some catching up, maybe Ava showing me her recovering surgical scar with the proud fascination only a kid can have about their own body. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Mother's face was tight with worry. My father wouldn't meet my eyes, and Melissa sat at the head of the table like she was presiding over a tribunal. "Rachel," Melissa began, her voice trembling in a way that felt performed. "We need to talk about what happened while we were in Cabo." "Okay," I said carefully, sensing the temperature of the room shift. "You signed legal guardianship paperwork for my daughter without my permission. Tyler and I talked to a friend of ours who's a lawyer, and he said that's incredibly serious. He said it could be considered an attempt to take custody." The room went silent. I actually laughed, a short disbelieving sound because surely she was joking. She wasn't. "Melissa, that is emergency medical consent. It's temporary. It expires automatically. It's standard hospital protocol when a parent can't be reached during a medical emergency. I work in a law firm. I know exactly what that document is and is not. Do you, though? Because it sure looks convenient that you're the one who always wants to spend time with her, always picking her up, always the one there for everything. Tyler thinks you're trying to insert yourself as some kind of second mother because you don't have kids of your own." The words hit me like a slap. My own mother, instead of defending me, said quietly, "Rachel, honey, maybe you have been a little involved." involved, as if being the person who called the ambulance while their daughter was screaming in pain on C. My bathroom floor was somehow a character flaw. I looked around that table at my sister, my mother, my father who still wouldn't look up from his plate, and I felt the ground disappear beneath me. I saved her life, I said quietly. You weren't. Here I was. And we appreciate that, Melissa said in a tone that suggested the opposite. But going forward, we think it's best if you take a step back from Ava, some space, just until things feel normal again. I drove home that night in silence, Mark reaching over every few minutes to squeeze my hand because he didn't know what else to do. I cried until I had no tears left, not because I cared about being thanked, but because I had given that family everything. Every free Saturday, every dollar, every ounce of love I had. And the moment I stepped up during the worst crisis of their lives, I became the villain. For 3 weeks, I didn't hear from Ava at all. Melissa blocked me from picking her up from school without explanation. When I texted asking to FaceTime with my niece just to see her face, just to know she was okay, I was met with silence or short, cold replies. I felt like I was grieving someone who was still alive. It was Mark who finally said the thing I needed to hear. You keep saying you did nothing wrong, he told me one night as I sat staring blankly at my phone. So stop acting like you did. If they want to twist the truth, you make sure the truth can't be twisted anymore. Something shifted in me that night. I stopped crying and started thinking like the paralegal I actually was. If Melissa wanted to throw around words like custody and guardianship, fine. I was going to make sure every single fact about that night was documented, time-stamped, and irrefutable. The next morning, I requested my complete medical consent paperwork from the hospital. Official copies with timestamps proving I had signed only a temporary emergency treatment authorization, not any form of custody transfer. I pulled the phone records showing the 4 calls and 2 texts I'd made to Melissa that night, along with the timestamps proving how long it took her to respond while her daughter was in surgery. I saved every text message where Melissa herself asked me to babysit, dated back over a year, showing a clear pattern of dependence rather than the inserting myself narrative she was now pushing. I wasn't building this to destroy my sister. I want to be clear about that. I was building it because I refused to let a family that benefited from my love for an entire year turn around and rewrite history to make me the villain, especially not in front of a 7-year-old girl who deserved to know the truth about who actually showed up for her. And then, almost by accident, I found something much bigger than I ever expected. While gathering the hospital paperwork, I noticed something strange in the billing records. The hospital had also billed Melissa and Tyler's insurance for portions of the stay, and there was a note about a family plan discrepancy. Curious, and with my professional instincts kicking in, I asked a friend at the firm who specialized in insurance law to take a quick, informal look, just out of curiosity about how emergency billing worked in cases like this. What she found stopped. Me-cold Melissa and Tyler had, for the past 2 years, been claiming Ava under a family health savings plan through Tyler's employer that specifically required both parents to reside at the listed primary address at least 80% of the year to qualify for the reduced dependent rate. But Melissa and Tyler had also, unbeknownst to most of the family, been renting out their actual home for the past 14 months on a short-term vacation rental platform while living rent-free in a property owned by Tyler's parents, using the rental income to fund exactly the kind of lavish vacations that had kept them in Cabo while their daughter needed surgery. This wasn't illegal on its own, not exactly, but it did mean they had been misrepresenting their residency status on a benefits form, something that, if reported, could trigger an internal review from Tyler's employer and potentially require repayment of the subsidized rate difference. Going back over a year, I sat with that information for a long time. I want to be honest with you, because this isn't a story about a saint. Part of me wanted to use it as a weapon immediately. But the paralegal in me, the person who believes in doing things the right way, decided something different. I wasn't going to blackmail my sister. I was going to simply, calmly, let the truth exist where it needed to exist, and let consequences fall where they naturally would. My plan had 3 parts, and I want to walk you through exactly how it unfolded because I think the details matter. Part 1 was reclaiming the narrative within the family, using nothing but documented, undeniable fact. I requested a sit-down with my parents, just the 3 of us, no ambush this time, on my terms. I brought a folder. Inside were the official hospital consent forms, clearly labeled as temporary emergency. Authorization with an automatic 30-day expiration, alongside a printed explanation from the hospital's own patient advocacy office, confirming that no custody or guardianship rights were established or implied. Laid out the phone records showing the timeline of that night, the 4 unanswered calls, the 6 hours I sat alone, the fact that Melissa didn't board a flight home until a full day before her paid vacation ended. My mother's hands trembled as she looked through it. "Rachel, we didn't know it took her that long to even answer," my father said quietly, his voice heavy with something that sounded like shame. "You didn't ask," I said, not unkindly, but firmly. Nobody asked me what actually happened that night. Melissa told a story, and everyone believed it because it was easier than believing your favorite daughter left her sick child to protect a vacation. I watched my mother's face crumble, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief instead of anger. Part 2 of my plan involved simply stepping back, fully and completely, the way Melissa had originally demanded, except this time, I did it on my own terms and let the natural consequences unfold. See, Melissa hadn't realized how much of her life ran on my unpaid labor until it stopped. I didn't pick Ava up from school anymore. I didn't offer to babysit during emergency last-minute date nights. I didn't answer the panicked 9 p.m. text messages, asking if I could just quickly swing by because their sitter canceled. Within 3 weeks, Melissa was drowning, missing work meetings, arriving late to pick up Ava herself, visibly exhausted in a way I recognized immediately because I'd been carrying that exhaustion for her for over a year without complaint. I felt no satisfaction in her struggle exactly, but I did feel something important. Clarity. The family finally started to see, in real time, exactly how much I had actually been doing all along, not because I told them, but because the absence of it became impossible to ignore. Part 3 was the piece I hadn't originally planned for, the health savings discrepancy. I made a decision that I still stand by completely. I did not report it anonymously to Tyler's employer, out of spite. Instead, I mentioned gently and privately in a phone call to Melissa herself that I had accidentally come across some billing information while requesting Ava's hospital records, and that she might want to look into her family plan status before it became a bigger issue. I gave her the chance to fix it quietly, on her own, the same courtesy she never extended to me. "How do you even know about that?" she asked, her voice sharp with panic rather than gratitude. "I'm a paralegal, Melissa. I know how to read paperwork. I'm telling you because despite everything, I don't actually want to see you in real trouble. I just want you to understand what it feels like when someone assumes the worst about your intentions, instead of trusting that you're trying to help." There was a long silence on the phone. Are you threatening me?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm giving you exactly what you didn't give me, the benefit of the doubt and a chance to make it right, before it becomes a crisis." Everything came to a head at Ava's 8th birthday party 2 months later. I almost didn't go. Melissa had sent the invitation through a group text with no personal message attached, the kind of cold, obligatory gesture that told me exactly how she still felt. But Ava, sweet Ava, had called me herself, whispering into the phone because she wasn't supposed to use her mom's cell without permission. "Aunt Rachel, please come. It's not a party without you." I couldn't say no to that, so I went, armed with nothing but a gift, a genuine smile, and the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to defend herself because the truth had already spoken for itself throughout the family for weeks. The backyard was full of balloons and the usual chaos of 8-year-olds running around with cake on their faces. My parents were there, and something in the way my mother hugged me a little longer than usual told me things had shifted between us since our conversation. Melissa approached me near the drink table, arms crossed, Tyler hovering a few feet behind her like he wasn't sure whether to be present for this conversation or not. "I heard you told Mom and Dad everything," Melissa said, voice tight. "I told them the truth with documents, Melissa. That's different from telling a story. You made me look terrible. You made yourself look terrible the moment you chose a pool party over your daughter's surgery and then blamed me for showing up instead of you." Her face flushed red, and for a moment I thought she might storm off, the way she used to do as a teenager whenever she lost an argument she knew she couldn't win. Instead, something different happened. Her shoulders dropped. "I looked into that insurance thing," she said quietly, almost too quiet for anyone else to hear. "You were right. We would have owed almost $11,000 in back payments if it had gone to a formal review. We fixed our address status before it triggered anything. Tyler's mad at me for renting out the house without... It's a whole... thing." "I'm sorry that's stressful," I said, and I meant it, even though a part of me couldn't help but notice the irony that the very emergency fabrication she'd used to push me away had almost cost her more than any hospital bill ever could. "Why didn't you just report it? Most people would have." "Because I'm not most people, Melissa. I'm your sister. I actually love you, even when you make it incredibly hard." Her eyes welled up, and for the first time in months, I saw something real on her face instead of defensiveness. "I was embarrassed," she admitted. "That night in Cabo, I knew the second you called that I should have gotten on the first flight home. I knew it, and I didn't do it, and by the time I saw Ava in that hospital bed, I couldn't handle the guilt. It was easier to be angry at you than to face what I'd actually done." It was the closest thing to an honest apology I'd gotten from her in years, and honestly, it was enough for that moment. "I'm not saying we're fully okay," I told her, "but I'd like to try, for Ava's sake, and honestly, for ours too." Across the yard, Ava spotted us talking and came running over, cake frosting on her chin, completely unaware of the quiet earthquake that had just happened between the two most important women in her small world. "Aunt Rachel, come see my presents." I let her pull me by the hand toward the gift table, and I caught my mother watching us with tears in her eyes, the kind of tears that come from finally seeing clearly. It's been almost a year since that birthday party, and life looks different now in ways both small and significant. Melissa and I aren't back to exactly where we were before, and honestly, I don't think we ever will be, and I've made peace with that. Some trust, once broken, heals into something sturdier but scarred, like a bone that mends stronger at the fracture point but never quite forgets it broke. We talk regularly now, but boundaries exist where they didn't before. I still see Ava, but on a schedule we discuss together like adults, not as an unpaid, unappreciated safety net expected to appear at a moment's notice with no acknowledgement. Melissa actually thanked me, out loud, in front of our parents, at Thanksgiving last year, for what I did that night in the hospital. It took her over a year to say those words, but she said them, and I could tell they cost her something to admit. My parents have changed too. My mother apologized privately, told me she'd spent so many years automatically believing Melissa's version of events that she never stopped to ask whether it was actually true. "I'm proud of you," she told me. "Not just for what you did for Ava, but for how you handled all of it afterward. You didn't destroy anyone. You just made sure the truth had somewhere to live." That line stuck with me. I didn't set out to ruin my sister's life or expose her to the world. I set out to make sure that my own truth, my own actions, my own love couldn't be erased or rewritten by someone else's guilt and convenience. There's a particular kind of pain that comes from being punished for doing the right thing, and I think a lot of people who are watching this know exactly what I mean. Maybe you're the sibling who always gets called when things go wrong and gets forgotten when things go right. Maybe you've been the one holding a family together quietly, without thanks, until the one time you're needed most, and instead of gratitude, you get blame. If that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. Documenting the truth is not pettiness. Protecting your own reputation is not revenge. Stepping back from people who take you for granted is not cruelty. It's self-respect. Ava is 9 now, doing wonderfully, completely healthy, with barely a visible scar from her surgery. She doesn't know the full story of what happened between her mother and me that year, and honestly, she doesn't need to. What she knows is that Aunt Rachel showed up for her when it mattered, and that her mom and her aunt love each other enough to work through hard things instead of walking away from them. That, to me, feels like the real victory, more than any apology, more than any uncomfortable dinner table confrontation. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that the people who benefit most from your kindness are sometimes the very people who will punish you for it when their own guilt gets too heavy to carry. But truth, when you protect it patiently and honestly instead of weaponizing it out of anger, has a way of finding its own justice. I didn't need to scream or humiliate my sister publicly to be vindicated. I just needed to make sure the truth couldn't be buried, and I let the natural consequences of dishonesty do the rest. So if you've ever been the one who shows up, the one who sacrifices quietly, the one who gets blamed the moment you stop being convenient, remember this: your integrity is not up for negotiation, not even for family, especially not for family. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you even a little, if it reminded you of your own life in any way, please consider subscribing, because there are so many more stories like this one still to tell.